Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 235, A Tyrogue Full of Trouble. The episode begins with Ash and the gang walking through a tunnel known as Mount Mortar, as it was supposed to be a shortcut to Mahogany Town. When Ash and the gang emerged from the tunnel after seeing light at the end, quite literally, the first thing they noticed was a Tyrogue meditating, looking unhappy, and also having a blue scarf on it that looked pretty damaged. Ash had never seen a Tyrogue before, at least up close, so he scanned it with his Pokedex to learn more information about it. Seeing that Tyrogue seemed bitchy, Brock tried to cheer it up by giving it some food, although Tyrogue turned away, refusing it. This leads Brock to put this food back in his bag and search for another kind of food, thinking that Tyrogue might like that one. However, before Brock could put the food back in his bag, Tyrogue managed to snatch 3 containers of it, as it digged into its bag and ran off with the food. Ash immediately chases the Tyrogue to retrieve the food, but he is stopped as Tyrogue sends out a call for help, which alerts its friends, a Mankey and Primeape, who were in a nearby tree. So they jump out of the tree, sending a whole bunch of chestnuts down on Ash and the gang in the process, and then stop Ash in his tracks, allowing the Tyrogue to run away. Before Tyrogue ran, though, it gave the 2 other containers of food that it had taken to both Mankey and Primeape, indicating that it stole 3 because it wanted to share. As Mankey and Primeape caught the food, Misty and Brock had caught up to Ash. Speaking of Ash, in order to stop the Primeape and Mankey so he could get past them and get to the Tyrogue, he sent out his Bayleaf and had her use Vine Whip. However, the Mankey and Primeape dodged the Vine Whip by climbing up onto a cliff. Bayleaf continued to use Vine Whip on the cliff, though, in an attempt to reach them, leading Primeape and Mankey to begin walking down the cliff, where Tyrogue was also walking down as well, still trying to escape. Unfortunately for Tyrogue, it then tripped on a boulder that was etched into the cliff, which caused the boulder to go rolling down straight towards Ash and the gang, threatening to murder them. However, at the last second, a man shows up, along with his Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, and together they were able to destroy the boulder with brute force before it hit Ash and the gang. However, this destruction of the boulder still caused enough of a distraction for the Tyrogue, Primeape, and Mankey to get away. Anyways, this obviously would distract Ash and the gang, as they didn't know what the fuck had happened. They just saw the boulder get destroyed at the last minute. But then, they saw the man and his Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan slide down the cliff, and he greeted them, leading Ash and the gang to thank him. Due to how close they were, the man then suggested that Ash and the gang were probably heading for Mahogany Town, and Ash confirmed this, stating that he was heading there for the Pokémon League, as he showed off his 6 badges that he currently had, wanting to brag about them. The man took significant interest in Ash's Storm badge that he had earned from Chuck. He explains that he was Chuck's protege, so he knew Chuck, and was surprised that Ash was able to beat him, remarking that Ash must have been a good trainer in that case, since he really respected his master and thought that he was almost unbeatable. The man then introduced himself as Kyo, apparently Chuck's #1 student, and a black belt. Although, why wasn't he at the gym before then? Did he already graduate or some shit? He probably did. Noticing that Ash and the gang were probably hungry as fuck due to their long travels, Kyo then offers to take Ash and the gang to his house, also known as his training camp, where he was training for the P1 Grand Prix. Remember that event that Ash entered with his Primeape back in episode 29, all the way back during episode 29? Well, yeah, that event was coming up again this year, and he was looking to enter. Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, at Kyo's request, then bring Ash and the gang some food, as Kyo continues to explain that his training involved kicking boulders and climbing up mountains and shit, so that he could be in tip-top shape, along with his Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee. Eventually, as Ash and the gang continued to eat the food reminded Brock of the Tyrogue, since, Tyrogue stole his food and all that. And he questions Kyo on if he knew anything about the Tyrogue, wondering if it had caused trouble for anyone else, and Kyo confirms that it had caused trouble for a lot of people around the mountain area. So much trouble that even Officer Jenny couldn't deal with it all, clarifying that Tyrogue liked to rob a whole bunch of trainers on the road. Sure enough, a local villager then came up to talk to Kyo, informing him that Tyrogue was now trying to rob a farm property, hoping that Kyo could do something, because he was essentially viewed as the guardian of the area due to how strong he was. So, Kyo went to this farm area with Ash and the gang following, and immediately spot several broken windows on the farmhouse. So they run to the farm with Ash and Misty leaving behind Pikachu and Togepi to keep them safe, and the farmer tells them that Tyrogue was the one who smashed the windows. Ash and the gang question why Tyrogue would break windows, assuming that most of its crimes were just petty thefts of food because it was hungry, but the farmer then confirmed that this obviously wasn't the goddamn case, and revealed that the reason why he had called for Kyo was because he wanted Kyo to try and track down Tyrogue, as it had seemingly disappeared after breaking the windows, along with its 2 friends, Primeape and Mankey. Just then, though, Tyrogue revealed itself, riding one of the farmer's Tauros, and hurting it, causing the Tauros to get angry, which in turn angered the other Tauros, causing a Tauros stampede. The Tauros get even more angry as Primeape and Mankey hurt them and aggravate them as well, and they begin charging, coincidentally, toward Ash and the gang, the farmer, and Kyo. Ash and the gang run away, but then Misty remembered that they left Pikachu and Togepi by themselves, back on the edge of the farm, and although Pikachu was smart enough to run away, Togepi was fascinated by the coming Tauros, so it walked right into their path. Misty screamed out in panic, believing that Togepi was about to fucking die, but just then, surprisingly, as Tyrogue riding the Tauros approached, Tyrogue jumped off the Tauros and ran past some Butterfree flying by and caught Togepi before jumping back on his Tauros and continuing to charge towards Ash and the gang, although Togepi was now safe in its arms. So basically, despite Tyrogue apparently being a dick, it seemed to have a soft spot for Togepi as it saved it. Anyways, as the Tauros continued on, with the Tauros Tyrogue was riding being in the lead, Kyo stepped in, not wanting to run away, as he stops Tauros in its tracks as he grabs the Tauros' horns and pushes him backward. Ash and the gang came running, in fear that Kyo knocking back the Tauros would harm the Tyrogue, therefore harming Togepi, as if Tyrogue fell off Tauros, Togepi would as well. But thankfully, it seemed as though Tyrogue was only trying to get on the Tauros to stop it from stampeding as well, since it only wanted to anger it, not cause it to have a stampede that could potentially injure Togepi. So, when Kyo stopped its Tauros and demanded that Tyrogue return Togepi, Tyrogue happily obliged, as it gave Kyo Misty's Togepi, as Kyo then handed it off to Misty, and then Tyrogue jumped off the Tauros and ran off. With Togepi safe, Kyo then let go of the Tauros, though turned it in the opposite direction, so the stampede would continue the other way and not put the farm at risk. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was currently spying on the farm through some bushes as Wobbuffet forcibly popped out of its Pokeball, leading Jessie to recall it. And Team Rocket had seen the Tyrogue and its actions, and despite Tyrogue just saving Togepi heroically, they still thought that Tyrogue would be a great asset to Team Rocket, since it apparently still loved to cause some trouble, even though it also liked to save other Pokemon. And it was also very strong. So, with that, Team Rocket set their sights on capturing Tyrogue. However, they quickly changed their plan when they realized that Tyrogue would likely willingly join Team Rocket, since it appeared to be such a dick, so they decided to try and just find it and ask it instead. A little later, a lot of the other villagers had gathered up at the farm, having heard about yet another Tyrogue attack, and all the villagers were furious, demanding that Tyrogue should face some repercussions for all the trouble it's caused, such as being thrown in jail. Kyo comments that he totally understood all the villagers' frustrations, but he requested that they not try and throw him in jail, and instead let him try and reason with Tyrogue, stating his belief that Tyrogue could be reasoned with, since it seemed to help some Pokemon, such as Misty's Togepi. The villagers were reluctant to let Kyo try and reason with Tyrogue, especially when Kyo admitted that it would probably take him some time to do so, but they eventually agreed to give Kyo one more shot to try and reason with Tyrogue. Ash and the gang decided to help Kyo come up with a way to reason with Tyrogue, since they had come to the conclusion that Tyrogue must have only had issues with larger Pokemon, emphasis on why it had attacked Ash's Bayleaf, and also provoked the Tauros. Kyo confirms this, stating that he's never seen Tyrogue ever attack a small Pokemon, and explains that it was likely due to the fact that he pitied smaller Pokemon and viewed the bigger Pokemon as his rivals, since he wanted to be as tough as them. Ash and the gang now understood why Tyrogue hated bigger Pokemon, but they still wondered why it hated humans, leading Kyo to reveal that his reason for hating humans was the main thing that made Kyo so determined to reason with it as opposed to arrest it, explaining that one day, while he was meditating, he found Tyrogue knocked out, having just been abandoned by its trainer when they were doing some training together. Essentially, while the trainer was training with Tyrogue, it declared that Tyrogue was too weak and decided to abandon it mid-training. Tyrogue was very pissed off at its trainer for leaving it, so it tried to show off by showing its true training skills, but it tired itself out in the process, which knocked it out. Kyo saw this and went up to the Tyrogue, offering it food and trying to help it recover. But Tyrogue attacked him and then ran off, leading Kyo to come to the conclusion that Tyrogue must have hated all humans after its trainer had abandoned it, and it essentially had become super bitter and cold-hearted overall after the abandonment, and that's why it wanted to take out its anger on big Pokemon so it could try and prove itself. Kyo then revealed that his number one goal was not only to win the upcoming P1 Grand Prix, but to win the P1 Grand Prix with Tyrogue, wanting to earn Tyrogue's respect, proving to it that not all humans were bad. He then added that he planned to get Tyrogue to join him by battling Tyrogue and making it see Kyo's strength. Essentially, Kyo didn't want to see Tyrogue arrested because he wanted it as a part of its team, and also wanted to help the Tyrogue prove itself and trust humans again. Meanwhile, it of course wasn't just Tyrogue who had ran off, but also its Primeape and Mankey friends as well, and they were currently walking through the forest and had stumbled across an apple tree, which they then shook to make the apples fall down so they could get some food. However, only one apple fell down as a result of the shaking, and they needed 3 apples, one for each of them, so Mankey and Primeape then kicked the tree to get the other 2 apples down. Tyrogue eagerly picked one up, but before Tyrogue could eat it, a Hoppip, Sandshrew, and Skiploom then came by, requesting that Tyrogue give them the apple instead, as they were hungry. Just like Togepi, due to the Skiploom, Sandshrew, and Hoppip being small Pokemon, Tyrogue takes no issue with them whatsoever, and happily gives them its apple. Tyrogue then got down some more apples from the tree by kicking it itself, and shared them amongst himself, Mankey, Primeape, Sandshrew, Hoppip, and Skiploom. Everything was great, but then Team Rocket showed up and implemented their plan of requesting Tyrogue to join them, stating that it was a deal of a lifetime. Jessie and James then try to explain to Tyrogue what joining Team Rocket entailed, as Jessie gives him an example by stealing Sandshrews' apple, since she thought that Tyrogue would enjoy seeing this, thinking that Tyrogue was just as much of a prick as them. However, upon seeing Jessie take the apple, Tyrogue was very angered by this, since it cared for smaller Pokemon of course, and because of this, he beat up Jessie before attacking James and Meowth as well, believing them to be as bad, sending Team Rocket blasting off, as they questioned why the fuck Tyrogue was doing this. Before sending Team Rocket blasting off though, Tyrogue had made sure to retrieve Sandshrews' apple, and then it gave Sandshrew back the apple and said goodbye to them as Tyrogue, Mankey, and Primeape set off, believing that the Sandshrew, Hoppip, and Skiploom could handle themselves now. Meanwhile, Kyo was about to put his plan of earning the Tyrogue's respect by challenging it to a battle into action, as he went over to what he claimed was Tyrogue's favorite training grounds on the road, and called out for it. believing that Tyrogue would of course show up to its favorite training area. Ash and the gang doubted this though, as Kyo continued to call and nothing happened. However, Tyrogue, Mankey, and Primeape eventually showed up. Kyo explained that he wanted to challenge Tyrogue to a battle, and Tyrogue easily accepted, thinking that it would finally have an opportunity to prove to humans that it was stronger than them. Mankey and Primeape wanted to help Tyrogue, but Tyrogue urged them to stay back and watch, as it wanted this to be a fair fight, just as Kyo did. Anyways, Ash and the gang expected, when Kyo said he wanted to battle the Tyrogue, that he would try and battle it himself, but what he actually meant was he was going to have his Pokemon battle against Tyrogue, so he sent out his Hitmonchan, and the battle began. Hitmonchan made the first moves by going for several Comet Punches, but Tyrogue was able to dodge each one. Seeing how Comet Punches weren't working, Kyo ordered Hitmonchan to change its attacks up, and instead go for its stronger punches, being Mach Punch and Mega Punch. Unfortunately though, Tyrogue was able to dodge these punches by hiding behind a rock, leading Hitmonchan to instead just punch the rock, destroying it. Tyrogue then jumps out from the remains of the rock and uses Headbutt on Hitmonchan to the point where Hitmonchan was now knocked out in one hit, forcing Kyo to recall it and send in his Hitmonlee instead. Hitmonlee instantly goes for a rolling kick, but Tyrogue leans back as Hitmonlee kicks, dodging this as well. Tyrogue then gets back up on its feet fully and uses a double team, which confuses the Hitmonlee, as now it didn't know which one to hit. Kyo tried to order Hitmonlee to just attack each one of them, but Hitmonlee was too confused, and Kyo realized that he wouldn't be able to win the battle, as sure enough, Tyrogue then used another Headbutt to knock Hitmonlee out in one hit, just as it did Hitmonchan. Kyo then recalled Hitmonlee and proceeded to get out another Pokeball, indicating that he was going to throw out a third Pokemon, which Tyrogue was eagerly anticipating, wanting to beat the shit out of that one as well. And Mankey and Primeape were eagerly anticipating this as well, as they wanted to see their friend kick some ass. However, before Kyo could send out another Pokemon, Team Rocket show up in their Meowth balloon and quickly do their motto while in boxing outfits and use a rope to capture the Tyrogue and bring it up to their Meowth balloon, tying him up in the rope as well. Now having Tyrogue, Team Rocket begins to fly away, escaping in their balloon, leaving Ash to chase after them, with Kyo following. Kyo seemed to be more determined to get Tyrogue back than Ash though, understandably due to its wanted relationship with it. So Kyo ran past Ash and then ran up a steep hill, which brought him to a level height with the Meowth balloon, allowing him to jump directly on top of it. Team Rocket feel the movement that Kyo made as he landed on the balloon, although they didn't know what was causing it, so they simply shrugged it off as nothing. Although they should have been more cautious, as Kyo then punched the Meowth balloon, piercing it and causing a hole, which in turn makes the balloon begin to deflate and about to crash down to the ground. Before it crashes down though, Kyo willingly falls off the balloon and goes past Team Rocket, grabbing on to the rope at the bottom that Tyrogue was hanging onto and tied up to, assuring it that everything would be okay as the balloon crashed down. But since Kyo and Tyrogue were hanging from the rope at the bottom of the balloon, they were able to anticipate the fall coming before Team Rocket, so Kyo was able to untie Tyrogue from the rope, and the two of them jumped safely to the ground before the balloon actually fully crashed. However, when the balloon crashed, it landed on a boulder, sending it rolling down towards Kyo and Tyrogue. Thankfully though, Kyo was able to use his brute strength to stop the boulder, grabbing it, and even being able to hold it in his arms in the nick of time before it hits Tyrogue. Tyrogue, still being against humans, thought that Kyo was weak and wouldn't be able to hold the boulder for much longer, so it tried to put its hands out to stop the boulder, leading Kyo to tell it to forget the past with its asshole trainer and trust him, ordering Tyrogue to let him handle things and get away while it still could. However, before Tyrogue could even think of getting away, Team Rocket hopped out of their Meowth balloon, coming down to try and recruit Tyrogue to join them yet again, wanting to get it back, and stating that they only tried to capture Tyrogue before because it had refused them, and if it didn't refuse them anymore, then they wouldn't capture it. However, Tyrogue refused, even as Team Rocket persisted, meaning that Team Rocket couldn't get Tyrogue on their side. Just then, Ash finally caught up to Kyo, along with Brock and Misty having arrived as well, as Brock sent out his Onix, who tries to kill two birds with one stone by tackling away the boulder towards Team Rocket, hoping to take Team Rocket out, while also dealing with the boulder. However, Jesse and James then sent out Arbok and Weezing and had them attack the boulder to push it completely out of the way of both Ash and the gang and Team Rocket. Kyo then thanked Onix for his assistance, though claimed that he could have kept holding on to the boulder all on his own, since he apparently lifted boulders every morning. Upon hearing this, Tyrogue was impressed that a human was actually that skilled. Arbok and Weezing then began to attack, with Arbok using Poison Sting on Onix, but Onix was barely affected due to its hard rock shell. As for Weezing, it attacked using Sludge, but Pikachu destroyed the Sludge and attacked Weezing with Thunderbolt. With both Arbok and Weezing now unable to do any attacks, Onix took the opportunity to use Tackle on both of them, knocking them back into Jesse and James, and then Pikachu used Thunderbolt to send them blasting off. Damn, that was kinda quick, but Team Rocket was dealt with now. With Team Rocket gone, Kyo invited Tyrogue over to his training area and requested that they now have a battle between just him and Tyrogue, none of his Pokemon, wanting to prove to Tyrogue that he himself was strong and not just his Pokemon. Tyrogue already respected Kyo's strength after the ordeal with the boulder, so he decided to fully see what Kyo's strength was and accepted his challenge. Ash and the gang questioned why Kyo suddenly changed his mind, now deciding to fight without his Pokemon, leading Brock to suggest that it may have been because of Chuck's influence, remembering that Chuck liked to battle his Pokemon head-on as well, teaching that humans and Pokemon had no differences in a battle. The battle starts off with Tyrogue going for a punch, but Kyo crosses his arms to block it, not getting hurt much as a result. Seeing how just pure brute strength may not work against Kyo, Tyrogue came up with an actual strategy as it used Double Team to try and confuse Kyo as it had his Hitmonlee. However, Kyo meditated to calm himself down so he didn't get intimidated by all of Tyrogue's copies and simply just sat in the middle of the circle of Tyrogue, not bothering to attack, knowing that Tyrogue would eventually get frustrated with this and attack himself, and sure enough, it did, as it went in for another punch, being a sucker punch, which Kyo easily blocked with his palm, and also used his palm to push Tyrogue backward, punching him a little bit as well. Tyrogue got a bit angered by the punching, so it tried to change its strategy yet again, as it instead went in for a jump kick. However, Kyo stops the jump kick before it could hit him, as he grabs Tyrogue and throws him to the other side of the field. This leads Tyrogue to get back up and run over to Kyo again, this time going back to punching, and he does manage to successfully hit Kyo, but he wasn't fazed by it, and simply punched Tyrogue back, punching him so far that he landed into the nearby pond. As a result, Tyrogue sinks into the water, though it quickly emerges from the water, wanting to get back up, but it was too weak, as it then collapsed to its knees in defeat. Unfortunately for Tyrogue, its handkerchief was damaged in the battle, so it soon ripped off and was washed away by the pond's current. As Ash and the gang, Primeape, and Mankey watched in shock that Tyrogue was actually defeated, Kyo didn't take the time to celebrate his victory just yet, as he didn't want Tyrogue to be washed away in the current, just as its handkerchief was, so he immediately ran into the water and grabbed Tyrogue, before bringing him back to land. Kyo then told Tyrogue that it wasn't like its previous trainer, and would stay by its side no matter what, and requested that Tyrogue join his team to fight alongside him in the P1 Grand Prix, assuring that the two of them, alongside his other Pokemon, could totally win it, as Kyo then took his red armband off of his own arm and placed it on Tyrogue's neck, much like his previous handkerchief, as a way to sort of symbolize Tyrogue's potential new beginning with Kyo as his new trainer. This gesture made Tyrogue appreciate Kyo even more than he already did, so he accepted to join Kyo's team and assist him in the P1 Grand Prix with a smile. Kyo didn't want to separate Tyrogue from its friends though, and thought that they could be of use in the P1 Grand Prix as well, being fighting Pokemon, so Kyo invited Primeape and Mankey to be his new Pokemon as well, and they happily agreed, as the four of them were now going to compete in the P1 Grand Prix together. The episode then ends as Ash and the gang and Kyo say goodbye to each other, and Kyo wishes Ash luck in his next gym battle, and Ash and the gang wish Kyo and Tyrogue, Mankey, and Primeape luck in the P1 Grand Prix. Man, I wish we actually got to see if they won the Grand Prix, but they're characters of the day, so we'll never see them again. Damn.